Right, we're nearly up to the 100. We are up to the 100 mark, so let's get this broadcast underway. Indy Truck Davy out the truck now, home in his office. And apparently, a lot of you take offence to the fact I'm in my office now. I work in the evenings now, folks. I do a broadcast during the day. I don't do a broadcast in the evening. So you're not going to see me in a large vehicle for the time being until maybe I change my job again. Still a truck driver. Still drive large vehicles. Show my license if you want. But anyway, thanks to others. The job I've got now is suiting me. So, you know, if you want me to drop the Indy Truck Davy bit a little bit, the handle was given to me by a friend. A treasured friend. So I think I'll just hold on to it if you don't mind. Anyway, let's get this broadcast underway. It's Indy Truck Davy at the truck, not home in his office. In Salisbury, North Lanarkshire, where it's overcast and 9 degrees, really quite warm. That's the weather forecast for Salisbury, North Lanarkshire. If you want to know what the weather's like where you are, look out your own bloody window. Okay, right, this is a news review for the 1st of the 2nd, 2023 from the colony of Scotland. The Wednesday started with a mixed bag in the rags. Hey, you know, what's interesting about the paper review is I pick up a paper review for the Pravda. And when there's trouble at Mill, at Westminster, then a lot of the UK-wide publications that are published here in Scotland either have a different headline or they're dropped to the paper review altogether. For the last couple of days, the bigger publications have been dropped from the Pravda's review here in Scotland. All right. But anyway, let's move on. Now, the Red Tops and one of the knuckle-dragging loony rags, they go on a mother and daughter being murdered here in Scotland and buried under a kitchen floor, apparently. The Daily Mail tells us the SNP are at war with each other over the GRR. Not that I'm aware of, but I dare say there's discontent in the party from certain sections on the GRR. But when we look at polling in the party on the GRR, it was universally popular. And across the Parliament, across the public, it's been the same. To say I don't really get it. But I mean, it's just another lever to stick in the crack, isn't it? The Tory graph tells us there's nothing in the GRR bill to stop predatory men or predators if you're taking advantage of gender recognition certificates. Or there's a Davy says here. Sexual offences amongst gender transgender people are no any higher or any lower than the rest of the population. And predators are predators. They don't need a certificate to do what they're doing. This argument is nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Right. Now the eye tells us that the Tories are demanding Sunak cuts taxes. Now this is another bollock story. Why is it another bollock story? The Tories have got no reason to cut taxes. The Tories don't pay taxes. That's what the President Who has all about. Tories no paying taxes. Oof. The Daily Record tells us our kids are violent animals. Police youth violence figures don't back that up. But it seems to be ongoing. We're being told that our young people are violent thugs and that there's a crime epidemic being committed by these kids. Can't say I've witnessed it myself. And I live in quite a young, vibrant village. A lot of young people here. Don't suppose it's any different than any other settlement across Scotland. You get the odd troublemaker. And there's always been punch up between school kids. You know, but apparently our youths are ripping the streets up and causing a savvy around the savvy. But with a couple of incidents, I think. One in Dundee and one in Kirkcaldy. Mental. Right, the National tells us the Pravda stroke BBC will not report fairly on Scottish issues and will continue Scotland crap, Westminster good stories. Nobody's really surprised about that. This was the BBC's impartiality a review here in Scotland. What came up was that they can't fairly report on Scottish issues because they would need to then tell us that Scotland's public services and Scotland in general is faring much better than the rest of the UK. That can't be allowed. So it has to be Scotland too wee, too poor, too stupid and crap at everything, and Westminster good. Simple as that. I mean, yesterday's A&E figures were out. When they were bad figures, they were being trumpeted like hell. Tuesday's A&E figures were out. When they were bad figures, they were being trumpeted like hell. Figures are back to better than what they were in England pre-pandemic. So, no longer a story or one worth shoving. You know. So, the BBC, through their impartiality review, have decided that impartiality is not possible when it comes to Scotland. So it's official. The Pravda are biased, and they're going to remain biased. And that's the outcome of their internal report. You couldn't make this stuff up. Right, the Metro goes on a liar and lawmaker, Matt Hancock's car crash interview. Matt was on the TV to promote his new book. As far as I know, the title is My Time as Chief Executioner During the Pandemic. No, that's not it. But on the car crash interview, he gets his Bahookie Honda tale on his behaviour during the pandemic, especially the adulterous behaviour, which was caught on tape and then put out there for us all to see, when the rest of us couldn't get anywhere any nearer than 2 metres away from each other. In the workplace, images of the adulterous Matt Hancock smooching his intern or whatever it was not very gratifying. Anyway, Matt tries to give an apology, but he doesn't really understand why he's been slighted. So the apology means nothing. So that was the rags. Alright. Now let's move on. Wednesday started in the Pravda on England civil servants going on strike. Teachers, nurses, ambulance staff, border guards, train drivers, and various other people in the public sector go on strike. 250,000 public sector workers were on strike. Now the Pravda and some of those taking industrial action tried to make out it's a UK-wide general strike type thing. It was not. We'll get a wee bit more of that as we go on. So, why so little strike action in Scotland? Well, the SNP Green Scottish Government is doing something the House of Thieves and Carpetbaggers is not doing, and that's getting round the table with the various trade unions and trying to thrash out a deal. They're getting very far, very fast, because of Scotland's fixed budget and no magic money tree, i.e. central bank to print money, then, but at least it's averting serious strike action here in Scotland. Now, while the Tory elite in the House of Thieves and Carpetbaggers introduce laws to try and end collective bargaining and break the trade unions, the Scottish Government have gone to the table to try and sort out deals. So far, police and train drivers in Scotland have settled, as have many in local authorities. They've also settled. All right. But you know, it's trying to they're trying to make it look as if the same carry-ons going on here in Scotland as what's going on in England. It's no, as I say, but we'll get a wee bit more of that as we get into it. All right. Now moving on, Wednesday here in Scotland. In fact, we'll get into that now. In an attempt to make it look like Scotland's public services are also on strike, the Parliamentary here in Scotland run a piece on who was on strike here in Scotland. They ran a list. But when you read that list, you would think all these people in the public service were on strike here in Scotland. But when you get into the article, very few of them were on strike, actually. So, you know, let's get down the list, shall we? Schools, teachers. Yep, rolling 16 days of strike action, affecting 2 local authorities a day. University staff. I even know yesterday. They have been on strike. And they've got more strike action planned. But wasn't it part of yesterday? NHS? No. There isn't a nurses strike or midwife strike here in Scotland yet. Why is there no strikes in the NHS here in Scotland at the moment? Because the Royal College of Nursing and the Royal College of Midwifery have said that if you sit down with governments, then we won't go on strike. So here in Scotland, Humza Yousaf is round the table trying to thrash out a deal with the nurses and the midwives and the other employees in the National Health who haven't settled. Because remember, United and Unison have settled at 7.5%. It's the Royal College of Nurses, Royal College of Midwifery, and the GMB that have settled. Right? So, but they've all agreed not to go on strike as long as the negotiations are going on. So, no strikes here in the Scottish NHS, whereas down that road, the House of Thieves and Carpetbaggers, they're hiding behind the public pay review bodies and are refusing to get round the table with striking public officials because they're trying to break the strikes and break the trade unions. All right then, let's move on to the rails. Yep, but only a couple of hundred RNT workers are on strike here in Scotland. It's a dispute with central government in Westminster. The most ScotRail employees have settled, and they settled at 5%. All right. So any disruption in Scottish Railways at the moment is down to Network Rail and their employees, and that's directly linked to Westminster because Network Rail is not devolved. Civil servants, yep. 3,000 PCS members were on strike yesterday, but once again, it was a dispute with the criminal cabal and the House of Thieves and Carpetbaggers. Remember, folks, there is no Scottish civil service. It's the UK civil service working in Scotland. It's another form of control. Yep, you can have your parliament, but it's a sham because the UK civil service will continue the day-to-day running of your country. So we've had some claims. The next one on the list was firefighters. Firefighters have voted to go on strike. They haven't taken any strike action yet. So another lie for the Pravda. So the picture is very different here in Scotland. And I see in the papers this morning, one of the loony rags is trying to claim that there was 50,000 public servants on strike here in Scotland yesterday. There wasn't. There was 400 or 500 teachers, I think, in 2 local authorities. There was a couple of hundred Network Rail employees and 3,000 members of the PCS. So 4,100 strikers yesterday in Scotland. There may have been more rallies and more trade unions out showing solidarity, but they weren't on strike. So The Pravda's at it, folks. That was the list they put out. Teachers, nurses, NHS staff, firefighters, railway staff, civil servants. And out of that lot, a couple of hundred railway staff, a couple of hundred teachers, and 3,000 PCS workers were on strike here in Scotland just in time. Oh, and a few border control staff, but they're also members of the PCS union. There you have it. That's what you call propaganda, folks. Right, let's move on. Moving on Wednesday, and on to the mainstream media's coverage of the strikes. Oof, what a disgrace it was. And it was the usual stuff. TV outlets interviewed trade union leaders, and right across the board, they tried to demonise the strikers in the trade union. Leaders, all right. Richard Medley told firefighters they shouldn't be allowed to strike by law. They shouldn't be allowed to strike by law. Richard Medley says that their frontline, a lifeline, they're a lifeline service, like the police, and shouldn't be allowed to go and strike. The fireman's a trade union leader says, well, you rang there. Right across the world, firemen don't have the same obligations on them as a police and military personnel. And we're entitled to have trade unions, we're entitled to unionise, and we're entitled democratically to withdraw our labour. It was the same right across the board. Teachers, trade union leaders were told you're depriving our children of an education. PCS, border control workers who were on strike were blamed for immigration and the swarms or the invasion, as that mob in that road call it, of people coming across the channel in small boats. Folks, if you're not aware of this, the reason why there are so many people now coming across the channel in small boats who were not coming across prior to Brexit and leaving the EU, it's because of Brexit and leaving the EU. And if you're scratching your head at that one, let Davy explain it. Prior to leaving the EU, when people came across the channel in small boats, they were picked up, got a health check, were overnighted, and then were put back on buses and on ferries to take them back to the safe European country they came from. Now that we've left the EU, the arrangement to return them to the safe European country where they first landed in mainland Europe is over. So prior to leaving the EU, they weren't bothered coming because they knew that when they came across in a wee boat, they'd be stuck back in a bus, back in a ferry, and taken back to where they came to in Europe. Now they're coming across in droves because that deal doesn't exist anymore. And they're not being sent back to Europe. So it's worth them taking the risk to cross that channel because they now know that they won't be put on buses and ferries and taken back to the first European country or their point of entry into the EU. So there you go, they're a Brexit bonus for you. But yesterday the PCS workers and border control were being blamed for immigration problems with these small boats. You couldn't make it up. Really, you couldn't. It was also noticeable that the mainstream media didn't cover properly the large-scale rallies and picket lines that were going on across England and Wales. In fact, I've just seen a comment about Mick Lynch's speech. You know, never seen that in the MSM. Had to find that on the internet. It was on Joe, one of the news outlets on the internet. Very powerful speech, but don't get your knickers in a twist about it, folks. Heard all this before. Remember the miners' strikes? And Maggie didn't introduce legislation for minimum service. These strikes will only be effective until that law hits the statute. And it was said the only way it will stay effective after that law hits the statute is if the trade unions and the workforce break that law repeatedly. But great speech. We shall not be beaten. Workers taking back control. You heard that all before. You heard that all before. Got to be that far away from a general strike in the 80s, and the TUC backed off. Nobody's calling for a general strike at the moment. The TUC have fired a couple of shots across the bows, but nobody's calling for it at the moment. Starmer doesn't back the strikes at all. So, the coverage yesterday in the mainstream media tells you what's wrong with broken Britain, as they're calling it. This broken, disjointed union. So it is. The Pravda, instead of taking the side of the people and reporting truth to power, are telling the people that the public servants that are our lifeline services are disrupting our lives. That's what's wrong with the mainstream media here. Why is that wrong? Why is it like that with the mainstream media? Well, the corrupt state and the Conservative Party own the media. And the media is a joke. That's why I did this programme. Right, moving on Wednesday. And lunchtime rolls around and the Punch and Judy show gets underway down that road. Oof, it was another day of schoolboy stuff. Huh? What it was you're a bully, and the return was you have no principles. Then it was get round the table, sort out these strikes, and the return was you support the strikes. You're disrupting hard-working people. We support hard-working people. And then all this bollocks about fastest growing economy, lowest unemployment, poverty at an all-time low. If there was an award for telling lies, Sunak was a worried yesterday. And then after that, then comes the personal insults. After the, you've no policy, you won't support our policy. My dad's bigger than your dad. Then it moves on to the personal insults. You know, you're a tax dodging swine. Your party's a bully. That was Prime Minister's questions for you. And of course, next up, Stephen Flynn. And he's talking about why shouldn't Scotland abandon the sinking ship Brexitania? And we got the usual pushback about better to give us something. Not even Sunak believed what he was saying. But it was the usual. Working for everybody in the UK. Working for nobody in the UK. They haven't done nothing except for destroy the economy since they got onto power 13 years ago. Destroyed public services, destroyed the economy, ripped off the public purse. That's what Tories do. And the Tories are the epitome of the establishment, the state. They are the state. And the state's only interested in one thing, and that's protecting its bloody self. Maintaining the status quo. Those with power staying in power. The plebs staying in the factories, generating tax revenue for them to steal and put in offshore tax havens. And I see they've found Michelle Mone. Her yacht's parked up in Spain. Somebody went along and put a on the side of her boat. What was it again? Oh, something to do with ripping off COVID, the UK government funds. Mental. Can't mind off the top of my head now. So that was Prime Ministers for you. Two schoolboys shouting across the chamber at each other. You don't support me. You're a bully. Of course I don't support you. Your term's opposition. No, that's not good enough. You've got to support me. And support hard-working people. But the hell do you think the strikers are? If no hard-working people. Not just the hard-working people. They're the key workers in our society. They teach our children. They look after our healthcare. They keep the borders safe. Woof. Hard-working people. These are the hardest working people in our society. The hardest working. The teachers ensure that our future generations of educated people to run the economy and run the services. The people in the national health make sure we grow up fit and healthy to be able to contribute to society. Am I going mad? Is it only me that sees this stuff? That was it. Scottish Independence 2023. This is what they put on the side of Michelle Mone's boat as she went over the hill with 29 million quid of her money stuffed in her back pocket. Pandemic profiteer. Am I the only guy that sees this stuff? The way the mainstream media is behaving, the way the state's behaving, the way the Tory elite are behaving, and the way the plebs are sucking it up. Buttercups. Wow. Mental. So that was the weekly Punch and Judy show for you. Right, moving on Wednesday. And the tax scandals continue. This time it's the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak himself. Byline's Times is asking why months after promising to publish his tax returns if he became Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak has failed to do so. Now, Sunak's tax affairs have been in the Pravda recently, actually, last summer. His wife's had non-dom status. Sunak was and could well still be a green card holder, which means that he's declared himself a permanent resident in the United States of America. Wow. You know. I know that well being the UK Chancellor. He might not even be paying tax in the UK, he might be paying in America. Will Sunak publish his tax returns? He'll publish something, but it'll not be his tax returns. That's for sure. We also know that Sunak has been benefiting from an offshore trust to the tune of a good few quid. That was on the papers last year in October, actually. Okay, moving on Wednesday. And day 4 of the inquiry into Deputy Prime... Sorry, start again. Okay, moving on Wednesday, and day 4 of the inquiry into Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab's bullying allegations. All right. Things are not looking good for Raab, with Tory MSPs saying he'll be the next big hitter to be shown the door. Very likely. But he'll not be the last. But there is a Davy says here. Davy says it's this current crop of crap that are disguising themselves as politicians, but they're actually a criminal cabal, are big hitters, and we really do need to leave the UK fast. Really fast. Sorry, Sandra, I forgive you. Somebody sent me a message saying they'd unfriended me by mistake. Right, so if they're the current crop of big hitters, because there's not a big hitter amongst them, they're all bloody minnows. You know, then the people in England and Wales are up shite street without a paddle. Why? Well, let's face it, people in Northern Ireland and Scotland ultimately have exit doors. And we're getting hell but close to using them. Right, moving on Wednesday. And the state broadcaster tells us Red Tory leader Sir Comrade Starmer's attack on non-dom status could backfire on him. This was an interesting one as I was reading this article on the BBC website. You know, and the thinking behind it is the trade unions are unassociating themselves or disassociating themselves or affiliating themselves from the Labour Party, which means that Starmer is dependent on the rich to raise funds for the Labour Party. He's adopting the Tory model of raising funds. Crooked as hell, as we know. I mean, you can buy a first government contract for a couple of £100 apparently in the right Tory constituency offices. But anyway, Starmer's going after the rich man, the 1% to back him. Problem for Starmer is he's going to hound the non-dom thing. Most of these people he's looking for money happy offer non-dom status. So it could well be that the Labour Party run out of funds when they run up to the next election, if they can hold out, if the Tory Party can hold out. You've got to remember there was a mass exodus from the Tory Party of grassroots members from the Labour Party, the Red Tory Party, when Keir Starmer took over. So they're not dragging in that much in membership fee. The trade unions have stopped giving them fees and all. So this hounding non-doms could bite Starmer in the bahookie apparently, according to the Pravda. I thought that one was quite funny, it was worth a mention. Right, moving on Wednesday. And another day of another day of talks over the NI protocols. Now, early on in the day, it looked as if the UK and the EU were about to agree on the European Court of Justice being the final arbitrator on trade matters and trade disputes within Northern Ireland. By the end of the day, the ERG, the European Reform Group within the Conservative Party, had stamped their wee feet, and so UK-EU negotiators took a step back again. Now, the tragic thing about this is the DUP, who are not the biggest political party in Northern Ireland anymore, are holding the people of Northern Ireland to ransom. A bit like the Unionists here in Scotland are holding the people in Scotland to ransom and all, who are a second referendum. They're a minority, but they're directing the majority. But, say in Northern Ireland it's different. What's interesting about that is the majority of people in Northern Ireland want the protocols implemented in full. Thank you, Scottish Independence 2023. Give you on an update on the total. I'll tell you about the total we've managed to raise so far as tomorrow. And by Christ, we're going to need it for what's coming. Food price inflation, by the way, is now at 16.7%. But where were we? Northern Ireland and the final court of arbitration. The people in Northern Ireland like the protocols. They're popular. This is the general population. Northern Ireland is booming for the first time in 30, 40 years. It's always been the arse end of the UK economy. Now it's becoming a stalwart strength because of its access to both markets. So the NI protocols are popular and they're probably here to stay. Just a matter of waiting the DUP. Unfortunately, the people of Northern Ireland are suffering like hell while they wait them out. Not as I've just said, their economy's doing great. Aye. Anyway, so there you are, another day of drama at the EU-UK NI protocol negotiations. Right, and finally for Wednesday, it's speculated that, hold on, no, there's one there. Did I mention the trade unions having a go at Starmer to introduce proportional representation, as he promised in his spiel on the run up to becoming the Red Tory Party leader. So anyway, the trade unions are pressurising Starmer to run on a proportional representation in the next Labour manifesto for the general election. Now, and finally, on Wednesday, it's speculated that when the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee meets today, not only meets the third, but it's meeting today, they're going to hike interest rates again by 0.5% in an attempt to bring inflation down. But what it's really going to do is deepen the recession and speed up the contraction in the market. Now, I've explained this many times before, so I'll just make this brief. When you have a consumer economy and you take money out of the pockets of the consumer, then the consumer economy contracts because the consumers need money to spend into that economy. So what the Bank of England's doing by raising interest rates means mortgage rates and rent rates will go up. It means they're taking more money out of the consumer pockets, giving it freely to the banks for no effort whatsoever. Here, banks, there's a gift of £4 billion, while taking £4 billion straight out of the economy, making me Mrs. McGomford. Let's be a laugh, meaning the kids don't get fed as well, and she doesn't go out and buy the new carpet, new washing machine, new whatever it is that drives the economy. So Bank of England does stupid thing at stupid time is the headline for today. Okie dokie. And we'll find out about that in exactly 6 minutes' time. So that's what I've got for you this morning. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found it informative. Let's rattle through the papers because I'm going to go and pick Sarah up and take her for a medical. Right, Scotland's papers, hide and seek killer and a Baxter's jersey mystery. Oh, Jesus Christ. Apparently, the mother and daughter who were murdered, the daughter was died during a game of hide and seek. I don't know how you do that. So, let's have a look at this. Let's get some serious stuff. The Eye says Liz Truss comeback ignites fears of new Tory civil war. Wow, didn't know they'd finished the last one. It just seems to be fractionalising at a faster rate, rapid rate of knots. Right, the Metro has. Now it really hurts with the hell. And that is multi-billion-pound cost to the economy as strike action grows. So no, it's the strikers' fault that the economy is suffering. It's not the government, it's no Brexit, it's the strikers. Right, and the Scottish Daily Mail has less talk and more action to stop the strikes, and that's aimed at the Scottish Government. But as we know, the Scottish Government, and they say that 50,000 workers joined a day of action across Scotland yesterday. As far as I can tell you, didn't they? The National has PM mocked for claiming Brexit's not hitting pockets. MPs can only laugh at Sunak's attempt at denial, and it was pretty horrible to see. You know, he blamed the Ukraine war, and the energy crisis. They're answered. The Daily Echo goes on. That's not Slim Jim's shirt. So it's a football story about Jim Baxter, I think. Jersey from 1967. McTeer's auction house is selling it, but two other people say that they've got the shirt, so they can't sell it. They want the sale halted, all right. The Scottish Daily Mail goes on. Scandal of the missing Scots sex criminals. They're actually, these are people who are on the sex offenders register, who are already out in society, who haven't been shown up to register at the register, and who have disappeared into the sunset. The Mail's trying to blame that on the Scottish Government, but once they're out there in the public, even though they're on the sex offenders register, what is it they're supposed to do? Tag them. People have human rights, you know. The Herald says, worried teachers say toxic positivity leads to bullying and fails pupils. Toxic positivity. So there you are. We're not to tell the little buggers they're nice people. We're to tell them they're wee brats. Because we don't want toxic positivity. Because it leads to bullying and failing, apparently. The Scotsman has firms demand deposit return plan. Firms warn deposit return plan is in last chance saloon. Firms can say what they want. So legislation is passed and the scheme's put into place, they'll operate it. If they don't, they'll get fined. The Times has British gas breaks into homes of vulnerable. And this is another story on people being forced onto prepay meters. The Telegraph has RAF faces crisis over drive for diversity. Drive for diversity. The RAF's in crisis because they've got no bloody planes. Simple as that. Right, what's the star vote for us today? Let's hope we'll get a star. We haven't had a laugh in the last couple of days. Oh, here we go. The Daily Star of Scotland has trial told top killed in game of hide and seek. Jury hears claims against murder accused. So it's a tragic story of a young lady and her daughter who were murdered and buried under a kitchen floor. So that's the papers for you folks. Hope you found it interesting. Hope you found it informative. FMQs will be on the minute and say, but I want to watch it on a view back later. So remember, folks, support the independent media, support Broadcasting Scotland, Independence Live, Indie Live Radio, Caldon Media, Cruise Radio, the iScot Magazine, National Newspaper, support independent bloggers. I want to thank everybody who's sent a super sticker or bought a super chat today. As you know, the money goes to food banks, so it will be going to food banks. And keep your eyes on the prize. It's time to put party political policies to one side and start concentrating on the big stuff. People don't want to hear about how you think the Alpha Party or the SNP are going to be the ones to get us on the line. People want to talk about things like borders, international trade, currency, central banks, that sort of thing. So keep your eyes on the prize, get out there and win hearts and minds. Also follow the last couple of bits of guidance, folks. Clean hands and surfaces regularly, face coverings and enclosed public spaces. Now, if we want to get through this NHS crisis faster, then the face covering with closed public spaces, if you've got a cough, a cold, is good advice. All right. So, that's it for the day. We're back tomorrow at 8 o'clock again. Look after yourselves. Have a nice day.